Hey, what's going on guys? This is Jake at That Fit Friend, and today I'll be reviewing the TOLOS Archetype 2.0. So 3 pros that I have with the 2.0 is number 1, if you are on the market for that kind of do-it-all barefoot shoe, I think this model is going to excel for most folks' needs. This model has a nice casual look to it. There's less branding, so you can match it with a lot of different outfits. It's fairly comfortable overall with its low profile and sock-like fit, and it works pretty dang good for training. So this is one of my favorite barefoot shoes, for example, for lifting and doing more athletic focused workouts. So if you want that barefoot shoe for a little bit of everything, I think you'll resonate with the Archetype 2.0. The second pro that I have with the shoe is that the booty construction's been reworked. So in the first Archetype 1.0, it could be a little bit hard to get on for some folks. Now, I typically go barefoot in my shoes, and if my feet were sweaty, that model was tough to get on, even though I don't necessarily have the most voluminous foot. Now, with this model, it still can be a little bit finicky to get on, but you can tell that there's been a nice reworking of this construction. There's a little bit more stretch, and there's a bit more padding up here at the top of the boot as well, so I think it's a little bit more comfortable overall, on top of being a little bit more easy to get on. So I think that's a nice step in the right direction for the Archetype shoe line. The third pro that I have with this model is if you like barefoot shoes that have a very sock-like fit and a very low profile feel, you're gonna like this model a lot. The stack height sits around 5 millimeters, so it's very close to the ground. It now also comes with an insole, so you do get a little bit more variability with the cushion and feel of this model. But more specifically, if you're like me and you like that shoe that feels like a sock when you're doing different forms of training, so whether you're deadlifting, whether you're jumping, whether you're doing sprints, this model I think will excel for your needs based on that low profile design that comes with it. So that's where I think this shoe will really be a hit for those barefoot shoe asks. But now let's talk about a couple of cons that I have with the Archetype 2.0. So 2 cons that I have with the 2.0 is number 1, this still isn't the most breathable barefoot shoe on the market. So more specifically, I think if you're looking for that barefoot shoe that you can train in, but more specifically do longer runs in, this might be a pass for this model for you. With this upper construction, it's not gonna breathe the best. So again, if you're doing long runs, or if you just live in super hot climates, that might be something to consider. I don't think it's gonna be a massive issue for most folks. And if you're just lifting, doing sprints, or even more athletic focused workouts like myself in this shoe, I don't think the breathability will also be a major issue. But again, for long runs, definitely something to consider in regard to the breathability of the upper construction. The second con that I have with this model is, look, I like the reworked upper construction around the boot here. It does have more stretch, but I could see it still being problematic for folks with more voluminous feet. When my feet are sweaty, I still have to kind of struggle to get the shoe on, but again, that's very specific, and I don't think it's gonna matter for most folks. And I also think it's a step in a direction that I think will hopefully bring back folks who might have not resonated with the 1.0 with the 2.0, but it's definitely still worth considering for that very specific case of folks with very voluminous feet that found like the 1.0 was just absolutely impossible to get on. You might find that the 2.0 is still tough. Now it's a lot easier, but I don't want to write it off entirely in that context. Overall, the 2.0 has a lot of awesome little features to its construction that make it a stronger shoe in my opinion. But now let's talk about the performance of this model. So in the context of performance of the Archetype 2.0, I'll discuss how this shoe does for lifting, cross training, short runs, and at daily wear. Now in the context of lifting, this model is once again a hit in my opinion. It has a nice flexible sole construction. The outsole grips pretty well, so whether you're doing dumbbell, kettlebell work, deadlift, squats, etc., I don't think you're gonna have slip issues in this model, and it articulates pretty well too for things like lunges and whatnot. So if you're looking for that barefoot shoe that's very consistent across the board regarding traction and giving you a bunch of ground feel for strength training, the Archetype 2.0 should work plenty well for your needs. It's also plenty wide, I think, to accommodate different foot anatomies. So I have an E-width foot, and I find it really easy to splay my toes and grip the floor in this shoe. Plus, with the reworked TPU up here in the forefoot, I don't think you're gonna have as much creasing for my folks out there who did have some creasing issues when doing lunges and split squats in their last Archetype 1.0. For cross training, I really like this shoe, and that's because I'm a fan of sock-like fitting barefoot shoes. So again, keep in mind that I am somebody who likes that type of shoe, and that's where I think this model feeds really well into cross training. It gives you a nice lightweight feel when you're doing multi-directional work, explosive work, and I like that it has a nice level of articulation, so you can easily dig into the forefoot, the midfoot of the shoe, and it's gonna flex with the foot really well, and it's never gonna really feel like it's hindering your performance. Plus, I do think the grip should give you a nice traction on different surfaces, so whether you're training on turf, wooden gym floors, rubber gym mats, this model should work plenty well for your needs. And with the reworked upper construction, it does have a little bit more of a comfortable fit, I think, on the top of the foot as well, because the laces have also been a little bit widened. So overall, for cross training, I like this model, and I do like that the laces are longer too, just to add that on there, because if you're somebody who like to have your laces tight, but the Archetype 1.0 were a little bit short, that could also be a problem for you in the context of cross training in the last model. Now, when it comes to running, this model I think will work for shorter interval runs and for sprints. So I have used this model for 200 meter and 400 meter interval runs and sprints, and it's been fine. So I don't want to write this shoe off entirely for running, but I will say if you're looking for that shoe for tackling a mile plus, then you might want to look into other models, and that's solely because it's not going to have the most breathability, but also you'll get more out of your TOLOS model if you save it for like running or shorter runs versus kind of using for your long duration runs, especially if you want that barefoot shoe to also last for daily wear. So just keep that in mind with this model. You can run in them, but they're not going to be the strongest performing shoe because they're not really technically designed for that niche activity. Now, in the context of daily wear, I really like this model, and that's because of the minimalist branding. So I love branding when it is pretty much non-existent on shoes and clothes and whatnot. For this model, you have some TOLOS branding here on the heel and up here on the tongue, and then that's virtually it. So the TOLOS branding has been removed on the side of the shoe, and so if you want that more like low profile shoe that you can wear in business casual settings that doesn't necessarily scream like barefoot shoe or like gym focus shoe, I think that's where the Archetype 2.0 will excel. I also like that there are more colorways with different soles because it adds a little bit of taste without going over the top with its appearance. So for daily wear, I do like this model from an appearance context, and it's pretty dang comfortable as well for walking. This is Maui. He has asked me to tell you to please subscribe to the channel. It helps put kibble in his bowl, and it supports small business, AKA this channel. But let's get back to the review. When it comes to the price of the TOLOS Archetype 2.0, you can expect to pay 120 USD. Now compare that to something like the Primus Lite 3, and you're gonna save a little bit of money on a shoe that's gonna perform very similar. So I do like the price of the TOLOS Archetype 2.0. It has seen a slight increase from the 1.0, but honestly, I feel like the shoe is a stronger shoe overall, so it can be a little bit more justified. Plus, it's still not the most expensive barefoot shoe on the market, especially if you want that model for everything. But I do have a code for the channel. It gets you 10% off. It's that FitFriend. Helps support the channel, helps support what I do. I buy the shoes I review, so it does help there because I often put most of the money back from affiliates into buying more shoes to produce more content for y'all. But all that said, 120 for the shoe, I think is pretty on point for giving you a little bit of everything. All right, so now let's answer the question, who should buy the TOLOS Archetype 2.0? Number one, I think if you're looking for a barefoot shoe primarily for lifting and athletic focused workouts where you're gonna be doing sprints, multi-directional work, plyometrics, etc. This model will work really well for that context. This is one of my favorite barefoot shoes to do athletic style training in, so I do think that'll be a hit for most folks looking for that with their barefoot shoes. Another context where I think this shoe makes sense is if you want that barefoot shoe that can kind of do it all. So if you want that shoe that you can go train in, but then wear casually and not have it look like an overly gym focused barefoot shoe, I think this model will work in that context. I think a lot of the colorways go well with different outfits, and now obviously appearance is in the eye of the beholder.
My precious. Precious.
But I do think it's a pretty good looking barefoot shoe as well. I'm actually curious what you think. What do you think of the appearance of the TOLOS Archetype 2.0? Let me know in the comments below. The third context where I think this model makes a lot of sense is if you want that barefoot shoe that has a very low profile and sock-like feel. If that is something you're after with your barefoot shoes and you want to know that you're not gonna be like swimming around in the shoe or you're gonna have a ton of room in the boot, for example, that's where I think the TOLOS Archetype 2.0 can also excel. Now, who should pass on this model? Number one, if you're looking for that barefoot shoe for long distance runs, I would say pass on the Archetype 2.0. Go with the model that's gonna be a little bit more specific for that training ask. And then number two, if the 1.0 was absolutely impossible for you to get on, I would say tread lightly with the 2.0. It's a lot easier, in my opinion, to get on, but I don't want to write it off entirely for everybody as a shoe that's going to work for every single foot anatomy. So if that is you, I would say try this on in the comfort of your home so you don't scuff up the sole, so that way if you do need to return them, you can easily do so with no questions asked. And so all that said, those are two contexts where I can see the 2.0 falling a little short. When it comes to sizing the TOLOS Archetype 2.0, I think most folks should be safe going true to size in this model. I wear a size 10 shoe. I have an E width foot. foot, and this model kind of fits me like a glove, and I have a little bit of room at the end of my toe box, so I don't feel crammed by any means, and when I'm jumping and whatnot, I'm also not hitting the end of the toe box. So true to size should be the call for most folks. Now, if you have exceptionally thick feet, go up a half size, hedge your bets there. I think that'll be a better call for giving you a little bit more space and room in your shoes, but again, true to size should be the right call for most folks. All right, so when it comes to the weight, heel toe drop, and insole in the TOLOS Archetype 2.0, for my size 10 model here, we have a weight that sits around 8 ounces. The heel toe drop in this shoe is 0 millimeters, and as opposed to the 1.0, you now get removable insoles with the 2.0, so it's this textured insole right here, so you do get this nice textured insole if you want a little bit of additional cushion in your model. All right, so now let's break down the construction of the Archetype 2.0. Up here on the toe box, we have a TPU layer that extends the entirety of this toe box. This has been shortened a little bit, so it doesn't have as much of an aggressive break in the forefoot. The upper in this model is a poly mesh, and we also have some TPU overlays back here on the heel, and then we also have some TPU overlays internally to give you more lateral support in this model. Looking at the laces, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 core eyelets that go up in this shoe, and then you also have that booty style construction. This material has been reworked a little bit to give a little bit more stretch, so I think it should work for more foot anatomies. Once again, you get a little bit more padding here around the boot as well, and it's been brought up a tiny bit compared to the boot in the Archetype 1.0. You also have 2 loops here to help pull this on, and the laces have been elongated a little bit in this shoe compared to the 1.0. Looking at the sole, you have a grippy rubber sole tread. This is a consistent tread as the 1.0. It tends to last a while, but again, if you're doing long distance runs, you might break this down a little bit faster than you want, especially if you want a shoe that's gonna also work for daily wear. So just keep that in mind with this model if you're doing a lot of concrete running. And then when it comes to the stack height of this shoe sits around 5.5 millimeters. That's 3.5 millimeter thickness of the rubber and a 2 millimeter thick internal insole. So with the insole here, you have a finished internal construction, you have that TOLOS branding as well. And then lastly, you do have a little bit of a water repellent tech on the shoe. You have a minimal DWR on the outer poly mesh. So definitely something that I think is pretty cool about this model, especially for daily wear use. But if you have additional questions on this model's construction, drop a comment down below. All right, y'all, that wraps up this review of the TOLOS Archetype 2.0. Honestly, this is once again one of my favorite barefoot shoes, and the changes made in this model were subtle, but I think curated in a positive direction overall. If you have additional questions on this shoe, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally, whichever you prefer. And as always, y'all, drop a like in the video, drop subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.